Welcome back, travelers, to Legendary Lore, where today we're going to finally jump into the story of New Capenna. It's been a while. Yeah, exactly. It's been a while since we actually got to the story, the main story, and Joe's here, so we might as well get to it. A quick side note, if you guys want us to do the Planeswalker's Guide and actually go through each of the individual groups, that'd be 5 more episodes. We can do that if you guys leave in the comments that you'd like to see that, like we did for Strixhaven, since we know those are pretty popular.
Would that be 5 more episodes, or could we jam them all into one like we did Strixhaven?
Strixhaven, we actually had one for each of the different roll calls.
We did?
Yeah.
Why are we crazy?
Yeah, I know. There was a lot to cover. Anyways, the story of New Capenna does not start in New Capenna. It starts on Theros.
Oh, I think I know why.
Yeah, I think you know why, exactly why. Victory and betrayal tasted the same, like blood. That's how it starts. It starts off talking about how Elspeth has been stabbed through the entirety of her existence by Heliod's spear.
Oh, so we're starting back in time.
Yes.
We're doing like an Elspeth flashback.
Exactly. And basically the idea is that this is filling up all the stuff that you might have missed from Theros, which is the main reason we didn't do a Theros series first.
I thought it was because the story was bad.
Well, the original Theros story was pretty good.
Oh, well, we haven't done that because we didn't start doing Legendary Lores then.
Yeah, but before this, so you had context. But this gives you all the context you need.
Okay.
So it describes a Johnny roaring in the distance, too far to actually get to them, and that they were fighting a god. They were both wounded and weary from the battle with Xenagos. This is going back to Xenagos, and she also knew that her life had been forfeited the moment she made a deal with Erebos, which had also happened in the past because she wanted to try and save Daxos, who had been killed by Xenagos after he tricked her into killing him. Because I believe it was the blue-black god, Fennex. I believe he created if I remember this correctly, because obviously I didn't do research for this portion. I'm just reading off of what's happening here. But Fennex, if I remember correctly, created essentially a nightmare deal that made her kill Daxos, accidentally thinking he was a Phyrexian.
Okay.
Also, she loved him dearly. It was her dearest friend.
Dearest friend!
So, basically, after Heliod kills Ajani, he gives the corpse to Ajani. He's like, here, take this to Erebos. It belongs to him.
Kills Elspeth.
Yeah. And so, did I say kills Ajani?
Yes.
That would have been very upsetting for me. So basically, he's just there, like, super upset. Johnny's extremely upset. And so it talks about how they had gone and they had fought through all the stuff with Xenagos. If later on there's an opportunity, we might go into more of the Theros storyline. But suffice to say that Johnny's just like basically holding her as she dies. In her last words, she says, Ajani. And then she blinks each time slower than the last and dies because he could not get her help. And so it says that the last thing she saw was a flash of light cleaving the heavens in two. Because obviously death and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. It then jumps to the Maestro's Museum. And we get introduced to one of the most fabulous of individuals, Xander. I love him. He's so good. Lord Xander, the Collector. And so basically he's here and he's just like kind of hanging out.
Down the street.
Yeah. So as he's looking at all these different things, like he's thinking about his early assassination attempts because he used to do assassinations and when he was younger. Now he's older, he just has a bunch of people do it for him. But as he was thinking, yeah, exactly. But as he's thinking about them, he's thinking, I really could have done those better. They were amateurish. They were a bit drab. I could do this or that. I could have changed this. I could have added this little twist to that neck, that kind of thing. And as he's saying that, he hears a knock, and he's like, okay, enter. And it's Angelo. And Angelo comes in and he bows his head. This is actually supposed to be our first introduction to Angelo, but you get a better idea of who he is from the other story. So I
like that.
Yeah. So he says, matters took a little longer than expected to resolve. And he says, you weren't delayed. You were giving me time to appreciate the new landscaping across the way. So already we can see that Xander, I mean, obviously he's a boss, like a mob boss, but he doesn't care so much about the pomp and circumstance kind of thing, especially with Angelo, because Angelo is his right-hand man. Angelo is the guy that he trusts the most.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, look, don't worry about it. Stand here. I need to make some modifications to your ensemble before your next assignment. And so Angelo just walks over to a pedestal. He steps up. He does like the whole thing. And Angelo lets Xander start measuring him. And they're just kind of talking, and he's getting like information, like an update essentially. And he goes, how was the Mezio today? And I was like, how'd you know I was in the Mezio? But don't I know? And he's like, right, that's why you run this town. And so basically all that's happening, and he's getting the guy ready, all gussied up. And as he's working on him, he says, if only I ran this town. And Angelo's like, are you okay? Is something weighing on you? He goes, many somethings. And he basically says that the balance of power is shifting. And he says, I've heard whispers, the adversary, they call him. Now, I want to just say real quick, I hate the thing they did with the adversary. I hate it. I hate it so much, Joe. Because we know it's Ob Nixilis. We know it's Mob Nixilis.
If you're clicking on this video, you've seen some of Capenna. You've seen one of the cards in there is Ob Nixilis, the adversary.
He's literally on all the promotional material.
Yeah.
He's the adversary. His card is Ob Nixilis, the adversary. But they act like it's some shadowy individual. And when I bet
this is going to be a good story, but it's not a good mystery.
Yeah, like this isn't a mystery here. And with the main thing, there is a slight mystery, but even that's spoiled by the cards. But the adversary is described in like shadows, essentially, the entire time of the story. And it's talking about how like he's getting a foothold and he's getting like sleeper agents in basically every group and all this other stuff. But you never find out who he is. You get hints that he's a demon and all this stuff until the very end, where it's like, by the way, it's Ob Nixilis. It's like, no duh. Of course it's Ob Nixilis. Why is this being treated like, even they could act like this, but they could have a part where we get to see Ob Nixilis' perspective as he does something. Because that shows like, yeah, we as an audience are aware of Ob Nixilis story-wise. We should be aware of him because they should show him and show that he's done something. But no, we just have this idea that there's an adversary and they don't talk about him at all.
He's just a boogeyman.
Yeah, exactly. He just kind of shows up near the end after all these name drops, which I get are supposed to make him seem intimidating, but considering the stuff that he's capable of, why not just show him being intimidating?
Show him. He just gets burned by a 6-mana Chandra.
Yeah, just show him offing his goons to show his power. Because he's evil. That's what he would do. Anyways, Xander's basically preparing Angelo, and he's telling him that the cabaret demands are high in preparation for the crescendo. The crescendo is essentially this big, the swinging party that they're going to have, and that they know the adversary has access to Halo, and might be working for them, because if they had, the cabaret would have already taken the entirety of his supply. So that can't be it. And so they're trying to figure out, basically taking out each of the individual things and saying they have to go gather some information. And he says, spine? That sounds like a job for the Obscura, doesn't it? And he's like, well, yes, but this is a matter involving Halo. I prefer to keep things in-house. And with the man I trust above all others, no one will know this task but you. And he's like, there's something you're not telling me. He goes, isn't there always? I think it's just the thing to round out your ensemble. He takes out basically this ring, and he goes, what does it do? He goes, look terribly fashionable. Like, obviously the idea of like, oh, he's setting me up with like maybe these knife boots and like this thing or that thing. Here, last thing. Is there poison in it? No. Does it have hot sauce in it? No. What does it do? Terribly fashionable. I love it. It's so good.
Xander sounds like a riot.
Yeah, he's so, it's just like us building a deck. Here, you should put this in. Why? It's awesome. It'll blow everything up. This one, it's just a good artwork. I can't put this in. Why? It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the style. He says, I hear the Cavalry have been relentless in the Mezio in search for Halo. Return there and see what you can find. So at this point, they don't really know anything about any particular fonts or Halo sources. And they talk about how there's statues of angels everywhere and also this stuff. And it cuts over to the office of Grandfather Cabaretti. And we get introduced to Jetmir. And
Jetmir.
Yeah, Jetmir, the big old fat cat himself. And Ginny, who's she's actually petting a cat in her lap. Which, I mean, I understand that there's got to be various animals, but if you're in front of a giant fat cat, man, and you're just petting a cat, what is the actual pet cat thinking? Like, I should be up there. It's
the whole goofy Pluto scenario.
Yeah, exactly. It's this exact same thing. Like, does Jetmir eat the same food that this cat eats? Like, anyways, You have these two, they're talking to each other, and Jetmir essentially adopted Ginny. He took her under his wing because she's ruthless. And they're talking about what about this, about the crescendo? We have this Halo source, all this other stuff. What about the adversary? The adversary could be doing this and that. And so it's cool because it says Ginny with the notion of because the idea was they weren't going to send the adversary an invitation to the party. And she says the adversary isn't worth inviting. Doing so would be a show of respect he doesn't deserve. And it's sometimes better to show respect before it's due. You never know how a small friend now might become a big ally later. So basically, Jetmir's thinking this guy could actually form a new family. That's something that Omnixilus would be capable of. And it's like he's amassing a ton of power, and somewhere he's getting all this different stuff. And Jetmir says, "How is the font?" She goes, "In hand, no issues. Everything's just as we would hope, and no one is aware of the font beyond the inner council of Cabaret." And so they're relying on this mysterious font. And again, this is different from the adversary problem because, while if you're keeping up, you would know what the font is. As far as cards go, there's no promotional material showing that off. So that's reasonable. And they didn't show the card until the story was released. So they did a pretty good job of keeping that surprise of what it was until this point. So that's the real actual deal.
But if you run a show after all the stories have released, it's kind of difficult.
Yeah, exactly. So basically it's just them talking about how much they love to party. I'm just going to skip over all that. We also have Kit Canto show up. Because I know it's pretty great. And
I love it when Disney princesses show up at parties.
And so we have Kit Canto, we have Ginny, and then you have their friend Giada, who's just sitting there, and basically she has sustenance, shelter, and luxuries. But even despite all that, she's super fancy. Nails are always manicured. Her finest perfumes, all that stuff. And if anyone even tried to hurt Giada, Ginny would protect her because she's her best friend. And she can do anything she wants except leave. This is the way it's described.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And she asks if Giada's excited, and she says, I am. And she says, good, because we're going to change the plane. Then we jump to the Chaldea. And I'm going to ignore all of that because it's literally just the Vivian story from this perspective of her starting off and her meeting Tezzeret, and I already covered that in the Urabrask episode, and I don't feel like talking about Tezzeret and Vivian anymore.
Okay.
Then we get to Elspeth again. And this is nearing the end of this whole shtick. And it's basically how she it actually doesn't have her explaining how she met or found this place. It just has her saying that she found this place because Johnny said this was her home.
So does he still have her cloak sprawled across? Just by the way, when you go there, you're going to need to find some really eccentric clothes maker to make you some new clothes. I could just have my cloak. I could just have my cloak back. This is my cloak now?
Yeah, exactly.
This is for my dead friend. I'm alive, but you weren't.
So just to, this was basically as soon as Elspeth got out of Theros, she goes to Dominaria to find Johnny. because that's where they're currently based. Because obviously, Jace's Sanctum is not so much a Gatewatch area anymore necessarily.
Wait, so when does this take place then? Because it is during Innistrad.
Yeah, and so Johnny's here instead.
Oh, are there just like different people set up different places?
Yeah, because Johnny wasn't on Innistrad. And the Gatewatch is working on different like projects essentially.
Okay, so you have to ferry Chandra and Kai and just like, okay, here's Team A, and Johnny, you go with Team B, probably with Jaya and whatever.
Johnny is, if I'm not mistaken, with Liliana and Karn.
Liliana's a teacher.
Well, apparently she shows up here. I don't know. She's not going to, but you know what I mean.
Just like her clickbaity title, Liliana shows up here.
Yeah,
exactly. We have
exactly.
all the Magic community now.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, Liliana in New Capenna? I'm not even talking about. So, Johnny's first reaction is, "You're alive!"
That's good.
And I wish that when they put that, because it says "You're alive," a Johnny raced to her. His protective embrace crushed her. I wish it had said, "You're alive!" a Johnny roared as he raced towards her. Because I feel like that would have just been really great. And I'm not going to read the actual dialogue because I felt like it was really, really forced and didn't quite feel like a Johnny and Elspeth's interactions. So I'm just going to kind of give you the general idea of what happened. Because in the story, it kind of like goes kind of wishy-washy back and forth. So instead, Elspeth wraps her arms around Johnny. She's hugging him. He's super excited to see her. And she feels happiness, relief, safety. She feels a smile coming on. And it's been so long since she actually had any of those emotions and sensations. And he was like, "I didn't believe that you could be alive. You died in front of you, died in my arms." And his eyes are shining with emotion. He's so close to tears. And Elspeth's like, I can barely believe it myself. And she says that she can't believe that she found him, that she was so glad that she found him and that he was on Dominaria, and that she knew that they had met there once, and that was actually a reference to Scars of Mirrodin.
They meet on Dominaria?
Elspeth was on Dominaria during that point when she... with Koth, when they were able to pull Venser up. So that was most likely the time when they met.
Okay.
Yeah, that's more speculation, but I'm hoping like that's where it's supposed to like be pulling that stuff in. And she says that she expected to find him on Naya. And he explains that after he had defeated Bolas, he came with Karn and the Gatewatch to think about the Phyrexian threat. And he says, but there'll be time for business later. How are you here? And so it's hilarious to me that what we get is that the entirety of Theros Beyond Death is explained in a single paragraph. Elspeth told him of her time in the underworld following her death at Heliod's hand and how she had tricked the god of the sun into another confrontation, and in so doing she gave Erebos, the god of death, an opportunity to imprison Heliod. Erebos was so grateful that he allowed her to leave. There you go. That's the plot. Who's Calyx? I don't know. Who's Clothis? Who cares? All we know is that her actual story was that she tricked Heliod. Doesn't explain how she tricked Heliod, but apparently it happened somehow.
Maybe we know that part, don't we?
Well, we know that it happened, and we know that how it ended. But like, how do we know exactly how she got to the point where she was able to contact Heliod and be like, "Hey, bro, come down here"?
I thought it was by gaining attention with her Shadow Spear.
See, that's the thing. The Shadow Spear was like calling all the stuff, but they doesn't explain that here. She's not like, I had this nightmare spear that was created by Ashiok, but thanks to Ashiok, I was able to do all this and that, and that with all that.
Because of devotion, it was the real spear, but Heliod get mad about that. So he wanted to kill me with the real spear, but I had the real spear, so he died. Anyways,
it talks about how he's just like after that moment, he's just in silence, and he's staring intensely at her with his single eye. Oh yeah, that reminds me. Remember when I said his eyes were shining with emotion?
Uh-huh.
That's a direct line from the story. For anyone that's paying attention, he's a Cyclops. He has one eye. But his eyes were shining with emotion. And that's wizard's writing right there. So he's silently looking at her and like considering her, and she's never really seen him look at her that way. He's seen him like deep in thought, thinking about stuff, but never directly at her. And a small part of her is afraid, because he's like, obviously he's thinking about something, like he's considering something. And she's like thinking about the fact there's so much that's different about them. I mean, he has a cloak now and looks really familiar, and so doesn't say that, but and so they're on this bench sitting, and obviously at Johnny, what he does is he just scoops up her hands and holds them in his. How are you? And she's like, what? Elspeth, how are you? You're the strongest person I know. I can't imagine the toll on your body and spirit that you've been forced to endure. The upheaval when all you've wanted for so long is stability. And Daxos, I know how much he meant to you. And so she looks away like, oh no, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to do that. And so she says that basically she had wanted Theros to be her home. And that she basically wanted to find her home. All this time was all about her finding a place where she could be safe. And she says the hardest part is having nowhere to go. Calyx hunts me, and while I think I can shake him, where would I go when I do? No future with Daxos, not as he is now. Remember, he's an Eidolon now. We have the whole deal where he came back. No plane will ever be safe. And without that safety, there's no home. And she learned that at a very early age. And if
Daxos was a demigod.
Yes, I'm sorry. He was an Eidolon, and he was an Eidolon and a returned, and then he fused together and became Heliod's champion. You're right. I said Eidolon because I was thinking enchantment creature. That's my bad. But yeah. So it says that she basically thought, if gods don't mean safety, what could mean safety? There's no safety anywhere, because she equates safety with home, right? Mm-hmm. And so she says, I fought so hard to escape Erebos, and for what? Some days I don't know the answer. He says that he says that basically that's not home. Home's not a place, it's a feeling. And it's the people you share your dreams and those you trust. And she basically says that you have all these friends. It's easy for you to say. He goes, no, I am literally an albino lion. I've never had family early on in my life. I had to just planeswalk to another plane entirely to find people that accepted me. And the first guy was a dragon worshiper who was absolutely insane and looked like he was going to drop a death metal album. And so basically she explains that she can't find home because that's not possible. She can never feel those things and feel safe with those people. She can never trust properly. And he says the home comes from within. And immediately after that, he basically goes, by the way, I know where your home is.
She's like, you couldn't have led with that?
Yeah, but the thing is, like, it kind of feels like a dissonance of, I know where your home is, but home is not where you actually are from. So,
but this is where you're from, in case you want to check it out.
Exactly. If anything, they could have changed the way it was worded and had him say, look, while you were away, I found something that might help you figure that out for yourself. Or I found a place that like you might get some closure. If he said something along those lines where she'd be able to just push that out of the way and show it as like a stepping stone, that would make more sense, as opposed to being like, oh yeah, I found your home, you should go live there. No, doesn't make sense. But yeah, that's essentially how that went.
Well, that's delightful.
Yeah, it was really nice. Elspeth and Johnny reuniting.
Hopefully Elspeth will join the Gatewatch or something.
Oh, that'd be good. In replacement for Gideon.
Yeah.
The mono white one.
Since they destroyed the Teo thing with Arena. Nothing against Arena, but I would love those cards in paper.
Yeah. Definitely.
Anyway. Thank you guys so much for watching. We're going to go ahead and catch you guys next time with the continuation of Capenna. We have a lot of setups, so we're going to see Elspeth meet her new best friend.
Yeah, her dearest friend.
Go ahead and leave a like if you like the video, and subscribe for dearest friends.